Hello, everybody. My name is Maischein, and I'm very happy to present to you today a talk about how even you can release Perl. Yeah, will this talk help you? Well, hopefully yes, and especially if you are interested in Perl itself and yeah, maybe have been wondering about how a Perl release makes it onto CPAN and into your Linux distributions or even on Windows. And maybe also if you're interested in software development in general and how one can codify a process that in the end produces a new release of a software version, and how one can do the packaging and everything. I want to show you today a bit about how the sausage is made and demystify Perl. Give you a bit of a look behind the scenes of a Perl release and yes, how a new Perl version gets onto CPAN. In that process, I will also touch on what a release manager does and also what a release manager doesn't do. I'm not sure, do you see my slides or do you only see me in the camera picture? I mean, I don't mind, but it's maybe
slides. Yeah,
great. Thank you. So yeah, what a release manager does and does not do. Also maybe a bit about why you might want to be a release manager for Perl, and also a bit about what that entails, the things you have to do as a release manager. My name is Maischein. I work for the DZ Bank AG in Frankfurt, the Deutsche Zentralgenossenschaftsbank. This is the central bank of the cooperative banks in Germany. And my current occupation there is digital currency expert. I look at the digital euro and other digital currencies and what that means to us as a bank and for the cooperative banks in general. Also, I'm a board member of the Frankfurt Perlmongers, and we organize the German Perl Workshop since 10 years now, or maybe even 11 years. And yes, this year it was only an online conference, but next year, if you are in the vicinity of Germany, feel invited to come to Leipzig and enjoy the Perl Workshop there. Yeah, this is the release note or an excerpt of the release notes for Perl 5.35.0. And if you look closely enough, and I do, you will find my name there. And yes, how did my name get there? Not because I contributed so much interesting code to Perl itself, but only because I did a developer release of Perl. And yes, that already is enough to get my name on the list of developers of Perl. That's great. Git tells that story. I've done it 4 times already, at least Git says, for 5.15, for 5.17, and for 5.21, and last November for 5.33. Oops. So yes, as you might know or are about to realize, Perl is made of people, and those people do monthly developer releases since 2009 of Perl. There's one stable release of Perl every year, and that stable release is, any release is a bit more than just uploading the current state of the repository onto CPAN. But yes, it's not that much more. And yes, there are checklists what you can do, and these checklists live in the same repository as Perl itself on GitHub. The two files of interest are the Release Manager guide in the porting directory and the release schedule. The Release Manager guide has all the steps that you as a release manager want to follow or might have to follow to produce a new release of Perl. And the release schedule lists all the people that want to do a release for the next month out. So that, yes, at any time, it's always clear, hopefully, who is the next person to do a release and when that person will actually do the release. And yes, hopefully that person follows the release manager guide, and then we will get a new developer release of Perl on time. I've mentioned it a bit already. There is the stable release of Perl that comes out every year, and the developer release that comes out monthly. The stable release is usually or has usually been done by the Pumpkin. I'm actually not sure how the new Perl steering committee will handle the chores of actually packaging and releasing a new Perl release, but I think at least two of the current people in the Perl steering committee have done that. So I guess that Neil will be the third one, and it will be a learning experience for him. For a stable release, the release manager needs to make some hard decisions like what features to actually include, and wait for the test results so that nothing that is not supposed to break breaks, and maybe back out some code if that code breaks stuff. The developer release is not done by the Pumpkin, but by somebody named the release manager. That release manager could be anybody, for example, like me. You basically don't have to do any or make any hard decisions because it's a developer release anyway. So all the decisions are more or less easy. Either you back out a change that didn't seem to compile, or you leave it in. I mean, it is only this release that might be broken, and within the next 4 weeks, hopefully the fix or analysis comes in what actually broke. You, as a release manager, you do get fewer Git permissions than somebody doing the stable release, but I mean, Git is decentralized, so you don't actually need that much permissions. And for most of the changes I've done, I've submitted a pull request anyway. So the Git permissions aren't really a bonus or an issue in any way. As I already said, the stable release is an annual release. That means every year in maybe April or March, second quarter, we get a new stable Perl release. This release gets an even version number like Perl 5.34, and the stable version before that was Perl 5.32. And this is the version of Perl that is used to keep the world spinning. The developer releases are monthly. Around the 20th of each month, I do prefer to do the release on the weekend, so I sign up for the dates when the 20th is maybe a Friday or Saturday or Sunday. The developer releases do get an odd version number, like the current series is the 535 series. and Ricardo has already released 5.35.0, and I will be up next on the 20th of June to release 5.35.1. With the developer releases, you get no support, and if anything breaks using a developer releases, you get to keep all the parts, but the developer releases are still important because you can use them for CPAN testing or for testing your own code, just to keep up to date with Perl and just to make sure that Perl does not break your code. And please do report back if your code gets broken by a Perl developer release, so that the change can be assessed or the problem before the next stable release gets out. How can one become a release manager? Well, first you need to want to be a release manager. If you really want to do that, then you need to practice a bit. Then you register that you want to be a release manager for a given Perl version. And then you just do the release, and that's how you can carry the title Release Manager. Why would you want to do this? Well, maybe for the fame of having a title of Release Manager, but I think you should find fun in running such a release, because if you don't do it for fun, I'm actually not sure why to do it. Fame, I don't know if being a Perl release manager could give me a raise somewhere, or maybe free entrance. I don't know. So that leaves the next step of practicing a Perl release. For practicing a Perl release, well, not just for practicing, but also for a real Perl release, you will need to build Perl several times. So yes, you should feel somewhat comfortable with building Perl and with Git. These steps basically are fetching the Perl source from the Perl repository, then updating some files, compiling Perl several times, and running the Perl test suite several times. And once you're satisfied, then you build the release tarball and upload it. And these 5 steps are basically everything you need to do. But to take a closer look at this, there are some finer details. The Perl source code consists of the configure script, metaconfig. This is a shell script that runs as the first step of Perl compilation. Then the C source code that is somewhat modified by configure. And of course, the Perl modules that are distributed with the Perl core. And some other stuff like test files, programs that are used for building Perl, and some other documentation. So these play together when compiling Perl. Configure first creates a makefile when you run the configure shell script, and the make program then takes that makefile and creates mini-Perl. Mini-Perl is a restricted Perl that does not provide that many interfaces to your operating system, but is otherwise a good Perl. So you have regular expressions and text munging, and that is what mini-Perl is mostly used for, because then make again uses mini-Perl and another makefile to build the final Perl for your operating system. After you have built Perl, you then run make test, which uses Perl to run the test suite, and hopefully this gives you peace of mind because the test suite passes on your system. Usually the Perl test suite passes completely, but depending on your operating system, maybe there is one or two long-standing failures. And yes, this is one of the decisions you as a release manager have to make to decide whether either that test failure is not important, but the test stays in, or that test should be disabled for the release, or whatever else could be done about this. Because as a release manager, you will be building and rebuilding Perl several times. It helps to reduce the manual amount effort to do so. So here are the two commands that you can use to build Perl. First, you run configure with DES, which basically means use all the default settings for building Perl. And deuse_devil is the command line switch you need to use to automatically build a development release of Perl. Otherwise, the configure script will stop and tell you that you need to define the use_devil command line, or to use the deuse_devil command line switch, because if you are building a development release, you need to be explicit about wanting to build a development release. And after configure has run, you can directly run make test, which then will run all the other steps, building mini Perl, building Perl, and then running the test suite. The test suite takes, I think, about 20 minutes to complete, which isn't that long overall, but if you just fixed one typo, you should rerun the test suite, because maybe you introduced another typo, or you even introduced a real bug, or maybe breaking some code. So waiting 20 minutes just to find another bug is not satisfying. So actually making, I see Tux already said it, you really want to speed up building Perl and speed up the test suite. Building Perl can be made much faster by running the make process in parallel. Tux recommends 20 CPUs in your machine. My machine has 6 CPUs with 12 cores or something. But I found that using 8 core or 8 threads of compilation gives me the fastest result for my machine. So you first make the test, or let make perform all the tests for the test preparation with make-j8 test prep. The J8 is the number of CPUs to use, and in my case, 8 CPUs. And test prep is the target that prepares, or let's make run everything just short of running the actual test suite. This part of the build process. And then you, of course, also want to run the test suite in parallel. And this is done by setting the harness options environment variable to J:8. Different syntax, but that is it. And then you run make test harness. Test harness is the make target for running the test suite potentially in parallel. I see, yes, comment by Bruce Gray. Yes, it is impossible that this change or this commit could have broken anything, so I don't need to rerun the test suite. I have also done that. And yes, it's much better to lower the threshold of rerunning the test suite than to trust in my own hybris that my changes or my edits never break anything. Yes, running the test suite in parallel also improves things. With those parallel steps, I think Perl builds in under a minute and the test suite runs through in 2 minutes or something. So yeah, I can wait 3 minutes to see that my change didn't break anything. Yeah, Perl itself lives in Git as its source code management system, version control system, sorry. So yeah, you will also need some Git commands and to be generally familiar with Git, but it's only like 5 Git commands. Git checkout for actually creating a directory with the Perl source code from a repository, and Git pull to fetch the newest Perl source code from the repository, Git clean -dfx to wipe away everything that is not under Git source code control, and Git add to add changes that you've made to files. Oh, and Git command to then combine all these changes you've added to a single commit that later can be published. Most of the core devs build and test Perl frequently and most often in parallel, yes. Yes. So, or at least for me, the Perl build process when running it in parallel has been quite stable. The only interesting problem I've encountered so far has been trying to make test and make install both targets at the same time in parallel. This doesn't work because make test creates files and then deletes them, while make install will try to copy all these files, even the temporary files. But yeah, the trick around this is don't do it. Run make test in parallel and then run make install single threaded. It's IO bound anyway. Oh, yes, there is one more Git command that you need, Git push, which then publishes your commits to the outer world, that is to the mothership, the Perl repository itself. I've talked a bit about manual steps. I've given lots of talks about automating things. So yes, why is the Perl release process so manual? Well, not so manual, but why does it still contain any manual steps anyway? And yeah, to automate something, you have to understand it. First step. And you also have to understand the failure conditions that can occur, and also especially understand how those failure conditions manifest themselves and how to recognize them. I did, after most of my Perl dev releases, I automated a bit more, wrote some small tool to automate a bit. And yes, if you do a Perl developer release, maybe you find things that you want to write a Perl script for so that you can automate more parts of the Perl release process. Once you feel familiar enough with building Perl, then you should register yourself as a release manager in, oops, oh, yeah, and well, before you register yourself, you should have at least one patch accepted, but that can be a simple doc patch, or yeah, maybe fixing some HTTP links, or maybe some of the programs under porting. There's always more documentation for these programs that can be written. Yeah, I think this requirement of having at least one patch accepted is mostly so that you've demonstrated that you can operate Git well enough and, yes, can read the instructions on how to submit a change to Perl. In my case, I registered by chatting with Ricardo over IRC. IRC is not the mandatory medium. I think all the times before that, I simply wrote a mail to the current pumpkin. Yeah, or the pumpkins wrote a general mail asking for volunteers to do Perl releases. And I replied to these mails. Well, in this case, yeah, I chatted Ricardo up because we were chatting anyway. And yes, so that's how I came to do the release on June 20th. And yes, depending on how well my setup works, I hope to do a live stream and record it on Twitch. I'm not exactly sure if anybody is really interested in watching me type things and maybe ramble or talk about what I'm doing. But yeah, I'm going to try it anyway. I mean, it's not that it's much additional effort. So yes, I will try to live stream this software release. Yeah, and then after you've registered and been accepted as a release manager, you just have to do the release. The release consists of some preparation steps, like being a release manager. Then you prepare the release. There's a section of the release manager's guide that tells you what steps to do. You should be sure that Perl currently compiles. Oh yes, you should come up with an epigraph. The epigraph is an excerpt from a book or a poem or maybe a pop song, I don't know, something that inspires you personally as a release manager or that you found really interesting. And on the release day, around the 20th of the month, again, you follow the release manager's guide. And yes, preparing, it's not hard. And I really recommend that you join the IRC Perl org IRC server. They are the channel P5P. There are many people there that did a Perl release, and they are always friendly and helpful. If you have a question about compiling Perl, or maybe why Perl is not compiling on your system currently. Yes, a major part of the preparations is thinking about the epigraph. This is your main creative input as a release manager into a Perl release. So yes, find something that you want to publish there with your release of Perl. People have already said it, use poems, pop literature, or some other excerpts from text that maybe eerily fit current events or whatever. yes, for Perl releases, I usually spend as much time selecting the epigram as doing the release. I have to admit, I have a short list of 3 or 4 potential candidates for the epigraph, but yeah, I'm not content with any of them yet. So yes, it's taking up some time for me too. Yeah, on the release day, you run through the release manager guide again. You again do the pre-release steps. Oh, on the release day itself, don't panic. Imagine a picture from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe. The release day should be on or around the 20th. I mean, there is very little reason there's very little code reason to postpone a developer release or stop a developer release. So yes, you should just make enough time on the day you've chosen and then do the release. I found that the dev releases take maybe up to 8 hours. And yeah, the more experience I get with them, the less time I need for doing a developer release. I guess you could speed run it in like maybe 2 hours or something like that. But yeah, that means not waiting for any feedback of other testers, actually testing the files you've produced. So yeah, there should be no hurry. Yeah. And yeah, basically doing the release also means simply following the release manager's guide. And the P5P channel can help if you encounter problems or find that you feel like you've backed yourself into a corner with the Git commits or anything. Don't panic. I've already touched a bit on the automation part. Yeah, there still is a release manager, and doing a Perl release is still more than just running a single command. I feel this is mostly because there are steps that can fail, and recognizing that failure is hard, at least for programs. Humans are much better at recognizing failure, but if I wrote a program to automate some steps, I also need to make that program resilient in the sense that it recognizes when something goes wrong and ideally corrects the situation or at least stops the release process. And yes, if that program contains so much intelligence, then I would also want some tests for it. And writing test cases for hypothetical failures, a human can work better there with some written instructions. So yes. So for example, there is one step in the release where you install the old Perl version and the new Perl version into 2 separate directories. And then you compare the list of installed files between those versions. And yes, that could maybe be written as a test that no new files get installed. But that test doesn't help if actually new files get installed. So either that test would need continuous adaptation whenever a file gets removed or installed, or one needs to present that list to a human, and the human then needs to make an informed decision of whether this is okay or not. Let me just do a quick scroll down. So that part of checking that the diff is empty is not easily automated, or sensibly automated. I do have some release managers tools written. Yeah, there are some tests like, does DBI install, does inline C install, and I don't know, there is a third module that gets also tested for installation. I think, can we update the cpan PM module? Something like that. And yeah, for these tests, I've written a small Perl program that runs these tests. And I think it is fairly stable, and I will use it for my developer release. But yeah, checking the diff between the old and the new version, for example, is something that I haven't done. Patches are always welcome, either to my tools or to Perl itself. And ideally, yeah, you write and submit those patches while your memory is still fresh, right after you've done a release of Perl. I've also written a dashboard of the current release process that displays some nice check marks for every stage of the release process that you have already passed. And yes, that program is very short on basically, or is just one step before automating some of these steps. I might use this dashboard at least when I stream the release, and hopefully it will be then under this URL, https://corion.net release-5.35.1.html. But yeah, I will blog and publish the URL of the release dashboard. The problem is that there is no continuously advancing state while working through the release manager's guide. Well, no continuously advancing state on the file system while working through the release manager's guide. So yeah, recognizing which step you are at in the release manager's guide only through a Perl Pro or through any kind of program looking at the file system is unfortunately not possible. So yeah, I'm not sure if that dashboard can really be used to automate more steps of doing a Perl release. So yeah, these are my experiences and my opinions on doing a Perl release. But yes, of course, I want more. I want more cleanup patches that, maybe clean up some text or clean up a small helper program importing. Or maybe if you find drive-by patches that linger in GitHub and still are basically sound from their intention, or if your Linux distribution or whatever operating system distribution patches Perl or applies patches to its own version of Perl, those should also be folded into mainstream Perl. So yes, these are all good things to try as a first or second patch to Perl. Yes, by downstream of course includes also other distributors of Perl, not necessarily only Linux distributions. So yeah, what is good about the release manager's guide? Well, it actually documents a set of steps to produce a Perl release. And the release manager's guide works. Once you've arrived at the end and followed all the steps, you have actually produced a developer release. And yes, this is already one of the problems. The release manager guide is actually contains the steps for a developer release, and it also contains the steps for a final or stable Perl release. And yeah, these steps are not in the same order and not the same between the two kinds of releases. So yes, you need to hop around when doing one kind of release. So yeah, that's not so great about the release manager guide, but on the other hand, yeah, it still works. Even if there's a bit of go-to programming, like if you haven't done this part, do it now. Unless you are doing a developer release, then do this part at the end of the release. So yeah, if anybody can rewrite this, it would be great. And yes, thank you. That's all I have to say. I hope you found it interesting. Are there any questions? I think we still have some 5 minutes or something. So if there are questions or comments,
you have at least 9 minutes.
Oh. Abigail asked 8 hours and finds it a bit too high. No, the 8 hours don't include editing Perl Delta. At least for me, I think the 8 hours when I did my first release and didn't run the test suite in parallel. So that, yeah, every test run takes up 20 minutes. It's not actually 8 hours of continuous work. It's more like 5 minutes of work and then waiting 20 minutes again for the test suite to complete, which, yeah, isn't great.
Yeah, I was more wondering, how did you manage to do that in 8 hours? Because I usually took much more time, mostly because of the work for Perl Delta.
Oh, yeah, I did the Perl Delta work before the release day mostly, and yeah, so that the final touches on the Perl Delta are like, I don't know, mostly updating the Git commits, but yeah, no creative work on release day.
8 hours on the release day seems in line with what I used to spend. I was just wondering whether that 8 hours included the doing the Perl Delta, but I was also doing that during the time before the release date. But yeah, it takes quite some time the work on Perl Delta.
Yeah. What things have gone wrong for you? Neil asks. I think I got caught up in some or wedged during some Git commits. So yeah, I had to back out a Git commit and do a step again. I don't exactly remember what it was, but yeah, something like that. But yeah, somebody gave me the magic incantation to back out a commit from Git and then do the commit correctly. And yeah, one a bit more harrowing thing was that I had built the release tarball on Linux and then found that Windows did not compile because some new function had been added to the API but not exported, or no, some new function had been added but not listed in the API. And if a function is added to Perl but not listed in the Perl API, then it's not available on Windows. So yeah, I now run or check that Perl compiles on Windows in my preparations. So that shouldn't happen to me anymore. And yes, the decision there was simply to back out that change that added the new function, I think, or maybe I added it to the Perl API, but I think I just backed it out and released it without that change. Yes, Carl's comment of prodding developers to actually update Perl Delta with a short blurb about their change is important because it removes work from you as a release manager if people have already written a short text about their change. Yeah, it's at least while doing a release, I'm not good at coming up with descriptive text or anything. So having people who made the change write the change description is certainly good. Jim asks, do I have a separate machine available to me during dev releases? Yes, I have a laptop that runs Windows, and their building and running the test suite is slow, like maybe half an hour or something. But yeah, I use that to confirm that the current state still builds on Windows. Basically, once I veer off from the Bled Perl repository state, I start the build on the laptop, and yeah, hopefully that passes. But usually I also run such builds on the 5 days before that. It doesn't take much attention, but yeah, that's it. Oh, Maischein Maischein says that on ZOS builds take 12 hours or more. So yeah, then 20 minutes would be great. But yeah, as you are not actually doing development or anything, the quicker the turnaround is, the better. Bruce asks, is there anything about Perl that makes it a bad candidate for a CI, continuous integration, continuous deployment pipeline for development to avoid things like that API on Windows issue? Perl already has on GitHub with GitHub Actions such a CI or CD pipeline. One of the problems is that I think the build with MSVC, the free version, MSVC 10 or something, is now broken because the free version of MSVC is not available for anonymous download anymore. And another problem is that the Cygwin builds have constant failures, and it's unclear what part of the GitHub VM setup is problematic there. But in principle, the information is there, and the daily smoke, or not daily, but for every commit, there will be such a smoke run. Yeah, so that's already there, but I think the problem was before GitHub had actions. So yeah, it was like maybe 5 years ago or something.
That's an opportunity for somebody to help the process in yet another way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you have any more questions, feel free to send me a mail or chat me up in Slack. And yeah, thank you for your attention, and I hope you enjoy the conference. See ya.